Hello there, Richard Tubb here, at home in the studio garage in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England, and it is my pleasure to join you for today for the Acronis Cyber Summit. Kudos to Acronis for putting together such a great event with so many wonderful speakers and such a good community. It's just what the managed service provider community and the IT community as a whole needs during these tough times. So I'm going to start today's presentation by asking you to use the chat box and give me a quick virtual show of hands. Let me know who thinks of themselves as a managed service provider, an MSP. The reason I ask is today I want to talk about building a managed service provider business, but there's lots of different definitions of MSP in the industry. So I want to get today started by giving you my definition of what a managed service provider is. Now, I should say up front, what I say here is my opinion. Of course, these aren't the rules. There's lots of different ways to define a managed service provider, but I want to give you what I built as a managed service provider business. So for me, there are three key points to being a managed service provider. The first one is you must provide 24/7 by 365 monitoring and maintenance. Now, this is typically done using an RMM, a remote monitoring and maintenance tool. Of course, I say here 24/7 by 365 remote monitoring and maintenance. That doesn't mean 24/7 by 365 technical support. Most businesses don't provide 24/7 technical support, but you must be keeping an eye on your client's business infrastructure. You must be proactively looking for issues and dealing with them for your client. So that's the first step towards being a managed service provider. Step number two, and this is controversial, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. I believe that managed service providers should be providing a flat fee, all-you-can-eat technical support service. I get lots of pushback on this because people say, well, if I offer my clients an all-they-can-eat service, won't they just go crazy and just get in touch with me all the time with technical support requests? It has been my experience that is not the case. Your clients, the owners of small and medium-sized businesses, have got better things to do with their time than spend all day phoning you and saying, can you fix this? Can you fix that? They will only give you a call when they actually need you. So point number two here is an MSP should be providing a flat fee service. So whether a client phones you once or phones you 100 times in a month, they know that they're going to pay the same fee. And the third part of my definition of a managed service provider is an MSP provides vendor management. What does that mean, vendor management? Well, that means that if your client has a problem, for instance, with their broadband service, their internet connectivity, they would phone you and you would deal with the broadband provider. They aren't in that awkward situation where they're phoning the broadband provider and the broadband provider says, oh, there's a problem with the router, speak to your IT company. And they phone you and you say, there's no problem with the router, you need to speak to the internet service provider. No, you go around in circles with that. So a good MSP will provide vendor management. They will provide a single point of contact for their client to phone with any and all issues. And that is a really valuable service. I have heard some people call this one throat to choke. That's quite a violent way of putting it. Other people will say one hand to shake. So the point here is you're giving your clients a single point of contact. So using the chat box, now that I've defined what I think a managed service provider is, let me know in the chat box if you now think that you're an MSP or perhaps not. The reason I'm putting this out there is not to say what's right or wrong for a managed service provider, but I want to talk a little bit about how I define a managed service provider so that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, we're all looking from the same definition. So I built a managed service provider business very much like this. I founded and grew an MSP business based in Birmingham in England. I no longer own an MSP. I sold that business a number of years ago. So on a day-to-day basis, I now help the owners of IT businesses just like yourself watching today. And I help them essentially to free up their time and to concentrate on what's important and importantly, to make more money. Above all, though, I help MSPs like yourself to avoid the common mistakes that managed service providers make that cost them time and money. So in our time together today, I thought I would specifically share with you the common mistakes I see that MSPs make that cost them time and money. I thought I would share my own journey with you so you can see the mistakes that I made and how you can avoid making those same mistakes. In today's session together, I'm going to give you some practical, some clear, real-world advice and tips that you can take away that will save you time in growing your business and help you make more money. So let me know in the chat box if that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to crack on. I'm going to let you know up front, geek alert, I am a massive technology geek. I love technology. I love how technology can empower people to do a better job of running their business. I love how technology can help make the world a better place. So I love technology and I'm a geek, and that's why I got into running a managed service provider business. But let me tell you up front, even though I'm a geek, even though I'm a nerd, even though I love technology, I quickly realized in running an MSP that other people don't share the passion for technology that I do and perhaps you do watching today. They just want to use technology to do their job. It's important that we always remember that. So often as IT business owners, we can get carried away with the excitement of technology when the reality is that most of our clients come to us because they don't really care too much about technology. They know they need tech to run a good business, but they don't really care about technology. So it's important that we remember that. And it's important sometimes that we suppress the urge to be a big geek and jump in and get excited about technology and talk more about business to our clients. I learned this very, very early on in my career. So my background is actually in corporate IT. I started off in my career working for companies like Ernst & Young, GE Capital, the finance company, the National Health Service in the UK, companies like that, big organizations with lots and lots of technology. What I learned during that time was the benefits of processes. I learned the benefits of standardization of technology. And really importantly, I learned the benefit of documentation. You will see why this is so important in building a managed service provider as I go on during this presentation. So my career took a different path when the senior people within these organizations started to leave the likes of Ernst & Young and GE Capital and start their own businesses. And they asked me to come in and to do some support for them. So in 2001, going back a little bit now, but 2001, I started my own IT business. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I was your typical one-man band. I was an IT geek, I was fixing computers, and I was good at it. But in 2005, I read a book that absolutely changed my life. Let me know in the chat box if you've read this book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. A very famous book. If you've not read this book, I would hugely encourage you to go away from today's session and to seek it out. And at the end of today's session, I'm going to give you a link to a resource kit where I include this book, as well as lots of other books and lots of other resources that can be useful and helpful to you as you grow your business. So I will give you a URL for that at the end of our session together today. The reason I mention the E-Myth Revisited is it is a super important book for MSP owners. When I read the book in 2005, it really helped me to understand that running a business is about systems and processes. It's about building systems and processes that can enable you to outsource, to delegate work, and essentially, as the business owner, to free up your time. What I was able to do by using the E-Myth Revisited was to work on my business, not in it. And this investment of time is something that every business owner should be making. You might be watching this presentation today, and you might be distracted by your phone pinging, or by text messages, or by emails, or the telephone ringing with support requests. And I totally get it. The E-Myth Revisited taught me and it can teach you to build systems and processes that support you as the business owner, to allow yourself to extract yourself from the business and to work on your business instead of always working in your business. Sounds good. So as I said, this investment of time that I made is something I think every business owner should be doing. If you don't do this, if you don't invest time in building systems and processes, let me just tell you, I don't believe you own a business. You actually own a job. And that's fine if you want a job. For those of us who want to build a business that can run without us, it's super important we invest that time. Now, because I worked on my business rather than in the business, I was actually able to build a managed service provider business that contained intellectual property that became very valuable. So if you've ever wondered what your business is actually worth, it's really worth the intellectual property in there, the systems and processes that enable the business to run without you. I became aware in 2005 as well about this idea, this concept called managed services. Of course, managed services, everybody knows about it today. Lots of people actually go and do managed services. But at the time, 2005, it was a radical change for me. And I slowly but surely stopped selling my time for money and sold my services based on value instead. And I'd encourage you to think about managed services if you're not already doing it. The other thing I learned back then was this is a tough job to do on your own. You really do need to surround yourself with good people who can help you. I would encourage you, as I did back then, to learn from mentors, to seek out mentors, people who have been there and done that, people that you can learn from. The good news is, whether you're in the US, UK, South Africa, Australia, Europe, anywhere else, there are people all around the world, coaches, mentors who can help you to learn and to avoid the big mistakes that are going to cost you time and money. I would also encourage you to seek out peer groups. Now, peer groups, people wonder, well, why would I go and talk to my competition about running a business? I did this back when I ran my MSP business, and it made such a magnificent investment in time for me. It was so good for me to accelerate the growth of my business by speaking to other MSP owners, by speaking to people who were on the same journey as me. And I would encourage you to seek out and to find other people as well, to seek out your peers. The good news is, if you have a look at the chat box and if you have a look at the Acronis Summit as a whole here, you're surrounded by people who are eager to learn. You are surrounded by some people who are ahead in the journey of you and some people who are in the same position as you. I would encourage you to use this opportunity to network and to get to know other people who are attending this summit. I know we're all at home at the moment. We would love to be together in person to talk about this. Unfortunately, the world being what it is, we're at home, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation with one another and get to know each other's businesses. If you are in a part of the world and you're thinking, I don't really know where I would go to speak to other people, in the resource kit that I will share at the end of today's session, I will give you links to all the user groups around the world. But in short, I would say speak to somebody like Robert Gibbons, who runs a group in Manchester in the northwest of the UK. You've got Chris Tim and Daniel Welling, who run a group in London. You've got Stefan across from Zebra, across in the Czech Republic, who can put you in touch with people. You've got Carl Palachuk in the United States, who can get you in touch with people. There are user groups in Australia, in South Africa, in France, all over the world. There are people who can help you out. So please don't try to do this alone. It is a mistake to try and do it alone. I didn't do it on my own. I learned from people who are much smarter than me, who have been there, who have done it, and it really accelerated my learning. So please do seek out help. The other thing that I did when I was running my managed service provider as well is I actually shared my journey. I've been blogging for 20 years now. It's a long time and I'm showing my age. But when I was an MSP owner, I shared what was working for me. I shared what wasn't working. I shared my challenges. I shared my success. Why did I do that? Well, I would often share things because I was seeking out help. Other times I was sharing my journey so that other business owners, potential clients would follow with interest. The bottom line here is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. By sharing your journey, you can build trust in you. You can demonstrate your expertise. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I'd encourage you to take a screenshot of this infographic that's on screen at the moment. I think you'll agree with me, it's a beautiful piece of artwork, and it's actually put together by a very smart man called Tanmay Vora. Please take a screenshot of this, tweet it out at TN Vora. Let Tanmay know that you appreciate his great artwork there. But for me, the bottom line is by sharing your journey, by sharing what you are learning, you are helping yourself, you're helping people around you get to know you, you are helping others as well. So for me, my blog became my personal knowledge base. And what I realized over the last 20 years of blogging is that being authentic, sharing your journey, warts and all, leads to trust. And this is a big part of building a business in the modern age. People find you online, they want to get to know you online. So by sharing your journey, you can build that trust. We've already talked about seeking out your peers for peer groups. Something else that I did really strongly at the time was collaborate with other businesses. Collaboration is a great way to grow your business. We focused, when we ran our MSP business, on one thing and one thing only: IT infrastructure. We built relationships with other IT businesses who could deliver complementary services to us. And I've been speaking during the Acronis Cyber Summit to many of you on chat who have said you've already worked with other IT businesses. In my experience, it always leads to good things. For instance, when I ran my MSP business, we had a client approach us and say, we want to speak to you about managed services, but we also need a CRM system. Now, we didn't put together CRM systems. We weren't experts in customer relationship management systems, but we knew somebody who did. So we approached these CRM experts and we said, do you want to partner up with us for this deal? We did. And we went in there and the client gave us a really big piece of business. When I said to the client, thank you, what made you choose us above the other MSPs that you were speaking to? The client said to us, all of the other MSPs we spoke to said, we don't do CRM, we can't help you. You were the only one who said, we don't do CRM, but let us introduce somebody else to you who does. We won a magnificent piece of business there. And throughout my career, and to this day, the businesses, the MSP businesses that I see that thrive and do the most and are the most successful are the ones who collaborate with others. So we'll talk in a minute about the mistakes I want you to avoid, but a big mistake I see MSPs making is they try to do everything. You simply can't. I'd encourage you instead to collaborate with others. The great news is you're here at the Cyber Summit today. Use the chat box, get to know your fellow attendees, use social media, get to know your attendees and build up some of those relationships. It could be somebody who's an expert in voice over IP. It could be somebody who's an expert in CRM. There's going to be Linux experts here. There's going to be Apple Mac experts. Not every MSP does those services. You might know somebody who's really good with web design. You might know somebody who's good with data cabling. Build those relationships and stick to what you're good at, your core competency, IT infrastructure, and build relationships that allow you to offer other services to your clients. That's what I did, and that enabled me to build a successful MSP. So 2005, I was a geek on my own, starting out in managed services. I'm happy to say by 2011, I had built the business up into a thriving concern, and I actually sold that business at the end of 2011. The intellectual property I built within my business, the systems, the processes, the documentation, the way of doing things, that was intellectual property that meant that selling my business was actually a relatively easier sale. I wasn't selling the clients or the staff in the business. I was selling a template of a successful business that anybody could run. That's what I want to share with you today. After I'd sold the business, because I'd been sharing my journey and because I'd built that trust and authenticity, many of my competitors started to pick up the phone to me. And so what I do now on a day-to-day basis is help people like yourself to achieve your goals. And so based on my work with MSPs like yourself, I've actually highlighted 5 fundamental mistakes that I see IT businesses making that cost them time and money. The companies that avoid these mistakes thrive. The companies that make these mistakes struggle. So I want to share with you how you can avoid those mistakes. Mistake number 1 is not documenting your business. If you don't document your business, if you're the business owner and you don't document, there is a great danger that you might become what I would call an SPF, a single point of failure. If you were to get knocked over by a bus tomorrow, God forbid, if you were to get knocked over, would your business be able to carry on without you? I can tell you, unfortunately, that I live with the experience of this because I was knocked over in a hit and run car accident. Thankfully, within a couple of months, I was back on my feet, but the business continued without me because it was documented. Later that year, I actually ended up in hospital again. It was a bad year for me, but the business continued because it was documented. So if you think, I don't really need to document it, I've got it all up here, what would happen to you if you were taken out of the business? Documentation is so very important. If you, as the business owner, the business could survive without you, there might be other key people within your business who it could not survive without. You might have other single points of failure, SPFs. It could be a salesman who's got all the relationships. It could be a senior engineer who knows everything about all your clients, but all the information is up here, not in systems. So mistake number 1 is not documenting your business. Where can you get started with documentation? Well, thankfully nowadays we've got some wonderful solutions out there that you can use, but I'm telling you here and now, you can start by picking up a pen and paper and just getting started with that. Empty things out of your head. Your head is a great place for making ideas, but not for storing them. So start documenting your business. You will find that when you document your business, it gives you the ability to delegate and to outsource to other people as well, which frees up your time. Remember my journey, I was able to delegate and outsource by documentation, and I was able to work on my business, not just in it. So mistake number 1, not documenting your business. The mistake number 2 that costs MSPs time and money is not using a professional services automation tool, a PSA tool. Lots of great tools out there on the market, and I'm happy to have conversations with people about what might be the best fit for you. But the point of using a PSA tool for your business, as opposed to just a help desk tool where you log tickets, a PSA tool is your business operating system. This is where everything, it's like the brain of your business. But the real point towards using it is that the businesses that thrive and succeed are businesses where they can measure their progress. What can be measured can be managed. Business consultant Peter Drucker said that many years ago, and it's something that I absolutely believe in. You don't want to grow your business for the sake of growth. You want to focus on profitability. For instance, I know many MSPs who here in the UK are £1 million MSP. They are big, they're getting there and they're doing lots of stuff. Yet they are not as profitable as a business that does a quarter of their size, a £250,000 MSP. The reason being they have grown and grown and grown without keeping an eye on profitability. A PSA tool enables you to manage your profitability. Log your time in it, measure your profitability. And in the chat, let me know, who's your biggest client? Now, is your biggest client based on revenue or profitability? Some of your smaller clients might actually be more profitable than your bigger clients. You really won't know until you start measuring. So mistake number 2 that I see MSPs make that costs them time and money is not using a PSA tool. I would encourage you to do so. Mistake number 3 is trying to be all things to all clients. Do you remember I said we focused in our MSP business on the core competencies? Please, please, please learn how to say no in a helpful way to your clients. Build strategic relationships with other businesses, other technology businesses, maybe even other MSPs who offer complementary services to you. I want you to be the connector. I want you to be the person your client comes to and says, hey, how can we do this? Knowing that you're going to be the person who can connect them with somebody else who can do it. Build strategic alliances. Again, the good news is you are surrounded by people who are brilliant at what they do. You are able to go and connect with people at the Acronis Cyber Summit. Build those relationships. But please don't say yes to business just because a client has asked you. I don't want you to be building websites. I don't want you to be doing CRM. I don't want you to be doing Linux if you're not an expert at it. Build relationships with people who can offer those services to your clients. Mistake number 4, massive. And if there's one thing that you take away from today's session, it is this. Good clients are reluctant to buy cheap. Cheap clients do not value your expertise. I want you to raise your prices. I want you to value the work that you offer to people. Do not try to be the cheapest. If you've got any clients who are nickel and diming you, as our American friends would say, who are always looking for you to deliver wonderful service and do everything now, but they pay you late or not at all, and they want things as cheaply as possible, that's not much fun. And it's not a profitable way to run a business. So I want you to raise your prices. I want you to value the work that you do, the expertise that you bring to people. Because strange things happen when you raise your prices. You start to attract clients who value your expertise, who value your professionalism. And they're a lot more fun to work with. They're a lot more profitable. They're a lot easier to work with. Raise your prices. One of the biggest mistakes that I see MSPs making is not charging enough. Please raise your prices. Again, let me know in the chat if I can give you any help at all with raising your prices, understanding what you should be charging for your managed services. And the final mistake, mistake number 5 that I see MSPs making is not asking for help. Do you own a business or do you own a job? I want to encourage you to seek out people you can learn from, to seek out people who can support you, to help you. I want you to consider outsourcing. I want you to consider delegation of the jobs that you shouldn't be doing within your business. I want you to collaborate with other people. Again, seek out user groups. There's plenty here in the UK. Robert Gibbons. In Australia, there are user groups. Speak with Stefan Binik at Zebra Systems in the Czech Republic. He can point you towards some of your peers. Wherever you are in the world, there are people that can help you. Please don't try and do it alone, because you can seek coaches, you can seek mentors to help you accelerate your business growth. Part of what I'm doing here today is to try to help you avoid the mistakes that I made. And so you can do things faster and better and make more money and build the life that you want. I would encourage you not to try to do it alone. You're at the Acronis Cyber Summit. There are lots of people here that you can speak to. Please share your experiences and get to know your peers. So those are the 5 mistakes that I see that cost managed service providers time and money. I would encourage you now to take a screenshot, to take a photograph of this slide here. I want you to go away from today's session and to take action. If you found anything that I said today valuable, please take action on it. Document your business. Use a PSA tool if you need help or advice on doing these things. Ask for help or advice. Seek out peer groups. Seek out user groups. Charge what you are worth and focus on your core competencies and build complementary services. Build strategic relationships with other IT business who can help you as well. I appreciate I've tried to give you an awful lot of information in a very short period of time there. I hope this has been helpful to you. As I promised, you can download a resource kit here from tubb.co/Acronis20RK for resource kit. Take a screenshot of that and let me know in the chat box if you have any problems at all. Download this resource kit. It's totally free to download. And in there, I've got all the books, all the resources, all the user groups, all the people that I've mentioned today, as well as all the mistakes that I mentioned. So hopefully you will find that useful. And I would also encourage you, if you would like to continue the conversation with me, I would love to hear from you. Please reach out to me. You can find me on my website at tubblog.co.uk. I'm at Tubblog on Twitter, or just use the chat box. I'm going to be around for the rest of the Acronis Cyber Summit. Reach out to me, have a good time, get to know your peers, and I hope you have a wonderful Acronis Cyber Summit. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Richard, for your amazing input within the MSP world. I thought it was really insightful with going through the 5 mistakes that MSP can make, and I think it's really an asset to have those kind of mistakes. So appreciate your session on this.
My pleasure.
So now, yeah, no problem. So now we'll begin with the Q&A session for a few minutes. If we do not get to your question, we will follow up via email. So going to our first question, one of the mistakes you put in was not using a PSA tool. So one of the questions was, what are your favorite PSA tools? I imagine it depends on a company size, but maybe you can make a few top of mind recommendations.
Sure. So yeah, good question. And I will say up front here, Adrian, it doesn't really matter which PSA tool you use. People get hung up about, oh, you know, I've got to get the absolute perfect one for my business. Using a PSA tool is the key. Doesn't really matter which one you use. That is not to dismiss, of course, this great market of tools that are out there. We've got things like Autotask, ConnectWise, but depending on the size of your business, there are other players in the market now. So there's tools out there like Atera, based out of Israel, which is a great RMM and PSA tool sort of combined. There's a tool called Halo PSA that's out there. There's Tigerpaw in the US. And there's a great tool called Harmony PSA, which is very cool for businesses that have got perhaps a multinational approach, you know, if they got offices in different countries and bill clients in different currencies. So on one hand, I'm saying, don't worry too much about, you know, laboring over your choice of PSA tool. There are lots out there. On the other hand, there are lots of choices out there. So make sure whichever company you work with fits your culture. You know, you want to have a conversation with them. This isn't, and I should say, Adrian, a PSA tool isn't a tool, you know, like Microsoft Word that you just install and start using. No, it's nothing like that. You need to make sure that you've got a good implementation team, that you've got good support from the manufacturer. So make sure to deep dive and find out that the company that you partner with is a good one for you, because you're going to be with them for a long, long time, because that is your business operating system.
Gotcha. Good. So on that too, we had a question coming in. We can't do everything, but what do you consider to be the minimum core services that an MSP can offer beyond RMM and support?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So for me, core competency is all around infrastructure. So the things that I would be concentrating on is the patching, the updating, the monitoring, the maintenance, that type of thing. However, with that said, Adrian, there are some other services and solutions that people just sort of expect MSPs to offer nowadays. One of them would be your broadband connection, internet service, that type of thing. And as I mentioned during my session, it can be a real pain for the client if they're having to phone their internet service provider and then phone you and then phone the internet service provider. So Yeah, internet service provision would be one of those things. Wi-Fi would be another one. Email security would be another one that I would absolutely bundle in there. So there are some minimum tools that people expect you to be using. Obviously, RMM and PSA are two of those. But think about, the key to this is to think about how you can lower your cost of support. If you put a tool in place for a client and it's going to reduce the number of support calls that they make, it's going to increase the amount of profit that you make off that managed service agreement. So when it comes to the tools that you're bundling, think about the tools that are going to lower your cost of support. And as I said during my session, some of the things that I really don't think MSPs should be looking at doing are things like website, SEO, those type of things. I would definitely partner up with another company to provide those type of services.
Good, understood. So going back to the 5 mistakes, as far as this question relates to this, one of them is not charging enough. Yes. So the question that came in was, how do I gauge what the market will bear in terms of pricing?
Sure. So I would go as the first thing I would say is what not to do, and that's not to charge based on the time that you spend servicing the client. A great example of that, Adrian, would be, if a client phones you up and says, my PCs are running slow, can you sort that out for us? In the old days, and I'm an old man in the industry now, Adrian, so in the old days, I would have wandered around to each computer and started defragging the hard disk drives to try and speed things up. And that maybe would have taken me an hour, a couple of hours. Now, with the RMM tools that we've got, we literally press a button and all of the machines are defragmented, and it's like happy days, the machines are running faster. The value you're providing to the client is still the same, but you wouldn't charge them for 5 seconds of pressing the key. So that's the first thing I would say, charge by value, not by time. And then when you think about that, that changes the whole conversation. You may speak to some clients and the value of their time not being wasted on IT problems might be very high. Some examples of this are people in the service industry, lawyers, solicitors, people in the real estate industry, accountants. Their billable time is really quite high. So if you're providing managed services to those type of businesses, what value is it going to be to them if you can save them an hour every day? That's where you should be charging higher. So that's the first thing I would say. Second thing is, regardless of which part of the world you're in, and I get people saying to me, oh, well, I'm in a rural situation. People won't pay this much for managed services. It really doesn't matter. What I'm going to say to you is, you know your own value, you know your own worth, and you also know if you're not charging enough. Because if I ask you, are you charging enough? You might go, So we just know as business owners, we know when we're not charging enough. So the way to put your prices up is raise the prices. And if nobody bats an eyelid, if nobody says anything to you, look to raise them some more in the future. Then at some point, you're going to reach a point where clients that you want to work with are starting to say, well, you're a little bit on the high ends. Is there anything we can do about price? That's when you're sort of hitting that ceiling. So I hope that answers that question, Adrian. But, we all know when we're undervaluing ourselves, and most people out there are undervaluing themselves. So please raise your prices.
So it kind of falls into, maybe you should kind of understand your clients first and foremost too.
Absolutely. So, what's the value you're providing to them? So.
Got it. Good. So I personally liked your discussion on the peer groups to kind of accelerate your knowledge and that foundation for, as an MSP, to kind of learn off them. Of course, you've been in this business, you made the mistakes, and you're trying to spread that kind of that knowledge base. So one of the questions that came in was, what are your favorite networking tools and techniques for expanding your reach or your sources as far as education, knowledge, coaching?
Good. So good question. And I think, we're here at this brilliant conference. I've been on social media before my presentation. I'll be on social media afterwards, the hashtag, and people are chatting away. So I would be using social media nowadays. It's difficult, isn't it? In the pandemic time, we can't get out there and meet people the way we would like to. But social media, it's still going really, really well. You can have conversations with people, follow hashtags, follow people who are like the people that you want to be around. And what I mean by that is some of the speakers that you are following today. Maybe go to their Twitter profile, see who is following them or who they're following, and you can find out like-minded people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, there's organizations out there like CompTIA, who are a not-for-profit, sort of a trade association for the IT industry, seek out some of their meetings and get to know your peers through that. And the third thing I would say is, when the world sort of changes back, whenever that might be, Adrian, we don't know when it's going to be at this stage, do get out there to local user group meetings and local peer group meetings. So in between now and then, I want to give a big shout out for the Tech Tribe, which is an awesome online community for managed service providers. Doing great stuff at the moment. And that's just a community where, unlike Facebook and Reddit and places where you'll have lots of people shooting you down and telling you what you're doing wrong, communities like the Tech Tribe are very supportive. And people won't tell you what you're doing wrong. People will say, hey, they'll give you the support and sort of gently point you in the right direction. So I hope that makes sense.
Yep, no, it definitely does. And based off my experience, I've used platforms like Meetup to discuss industry leaders as far as the technology I want to kind of understand more. Just being in the industry, I just want to learn more about the technology that we have.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out, Adrian. I gave the URL to the resource kit. People can absolutely go and download that. And in there, I've actually got a link to user groups all around the world. Whichever part of the world you're in, there's going to be a user group near you. And if there's not a user group near you, think about starting one, because you're not going to be alone.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that came in, Richard. I really appreciate the session that we had. Hopefully everyone learned from it. I know I did. Is there any kind of last thoughts that you wanted to add on?
Yeah, I would just say keep the conversation going. When I was running my managed service provider business, I benefited from going to conferences like this one. I benefited from speaking to peers. The number one thing, though, that I realized was one of my mentors taught me that vision without execution is hallucination, which is a great way of saying you may have picked up ideas today and from myself and from other speakers, but you need to go and implement them. What I would encourage everybody watching this, Adrian, not to do is to go back to their jobs in the office, go back into the help desk and just get deluged with all of the tickets and just get, worn down with everything they're doing. Carve some time out, put some time in the diary, some quiet time for you to review the notes that you've made during this conference and to go away and to take action on just one thing, because that's the way you make progress, by taking action on these things. So.
No, I appreciate it. And one of my biggest takeaways was the networking aspect, the building the relationship. So that's something that I definitely took away from this. So I gave you a follow on LinkedIn for sure.
Well, anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm available. LinkedIn, Twitter is my main platform on that. So come and say hello.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks a lot, Adrian.